Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Well, hello again, and welcome to Voters Digest. I'm your host, Bob Williams. Bruce has decided to vacate the premises for a day, I should say, for this week, and give us his co-hosts the opportunity to do a show. As an ex-union representative, I thought it would be good for the people in the community to understand what, why, and how unions operate. And I thought, well, who can I get to talk about unions in a proactive and sophisticated manner? So I decided I would call on a friend of mine for the past 30 years and see if he would grace us with his presence, and he said yes. It's a gentleman who is, I've found through my life, he has a very hard time in saying no. So he wears so many hats, more so than I. He wears so many hats that I have to write it down, and then I have to get an extra pad to put the rest of them on. But with me today is the Secretary-Treasurer of United Food and Commercial Workers, the President of Northwest Oregon Labor Council, I hope I said that right, also the founder and chair of Oregon Working Families. And I'd like for you to meet someone who I have a lot of respect for, otherwise he wouldn't be here, and that's Jeff Anderson. Jeff, welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it and happy to be here.
And, you know, I was thinking about, as on my way here today, the number of times that we have traveled, the number of political events we've attended, number of union events we've attended, the number of people we have met.
We've met thousands of people over a lot of years. We worked together for 20-some years.
Yes.
Quite an endeavor.
And I'm proud to say I've been retired for 16.
Which
so,
I'm envious.
And I'm still trying to figure out how we look so young, you know. But, you know, one of the things that I wanted you to talk to our viewing audience today about is unions. What is a union, and why is a union?
Well, in a nutshell, a labor union is not a building far away from where you work. It's not the people that work in that building. It's the people that work with you. I had my father tell me what a union member was when I started with the retail clerks back in 1976. I said, "Dad, I have to join this union." And he took me into the bathroom and said, "Look in the mirror." And he looked at me and said, "That's how strong your union is." And I thought, well, wow, that's pretty cool. But in the same breath, he also said, "That's also how weak your union is." His point being, it's not the people that come in from the brick and mortar building some far away place. It is the people that are working in the union. The members are the union, whether it's the work site, multiple work sites, and it's people coming together to better the lives for their communities, for their families, for themselves.
You know, that's one of the things that I realized as a worker. I think we worked for the same company at one time, but as a worker, once there was something that needed to be done, or you felt you had been mistreated, you had some place to go.
You had the ability to take care of problems, a complaint that something's not right, something's not happening, it doesn't seem fair. This gives you in a union the ability to collectively bargain a contract that spells out your rights. And so then you have the ability to follow a path, normally called a grievance. So once you filed a grievance can be handled at the early stages where the employer might have agreed to something, but they didn't do it. Well, then that's where a member would file a grievance. You investigate that grievance, you have a fact-finding hearing, you have an airing of the facts, and it's in a very neutral way, too. And that's where you hope to settle, but if not, then you have the ability to have the union represent you all the way up through including arbitration.
Well, I know a lot of people think that unions take away the ability of the employer. Is that, how does that?
I would say it's not true. In fact, we have a very large retailer in the Midwest who said when they looked at it 5 years after being union from being non-union, they found that they were being more administratively efficient. They were following policies. They were lax prior. And they also found that their managers were better equipped to handle the modern workforce.
Now, as a union member, what is expected of you on the job?
Well, I think a union member, like anybody that works for an employer, you give them your best. You want to produce for that employer. You have the opportunity to move up within their organization, but the union is there just to provide those instances where they're not following the say a low-level manager is doing something counter to what they have agreed to. So it just provides the checks and balances. But more importantly, collectively bargaining, whether it's for safe pensions or affordable health care, whether it's for wages, or in the political arena, passing legislation that benefits not just the union members and their families, but the community as a whole. So the greater purpose, I think, is the ability to come together collectively to negotiate. And it doesn't make sense for us to put an employer out of business.
Right.
An employer that makes more money, that's more successful, that shares it, is an equitable sharing for all.
Well, I know when I was talking to the guys at the barber shop, which I visit, but I don't have my hair cut. One of the things that they were telling me is that unions have a tendency to make companies go out of business. One, two, they always want to come in and tell you what you need to do on your on the job, and three, they want to disturb your workers when they are at work. Is that a true assessment?
No, that's the Archie Bunker stereotype from the past. I mean, the reality is labor unions have a voice in the workplace, but it's not to abridge the business. It's not to undermine the business. It's to be a partner. You see a lot of that in the building, construction, craft unions. The electrical union have a management and labor association, NECA and IBEW, that
Right.
negotiate for betterment, but they also advocate in unison together on state and local issues. So there's quite a birth from the old stereotype. Trade policies from the 1990s on have done more damage to middle-class jobs in automation. Labor is not the villain here. It's masked when it's really trade policies like NAFTA. NAFTA took 77,000 plus jobs out of Oregon. Over 40,000 of those manufacturing jobs were credited in the city of Portland alone as NAFTA listings.
All right. Yeah, I still have my speech that I gave down at the downtown regarding NAFTA. I was shocked. I was cleaning something out and I found this thing. It was framed. My wife had it framed. And I was like, man, this goes back quite a few years. Mm-hmm. So we were in that fight against NAFTA. But tell me something. If I'm a person just sitting out here and I'm listening to this program and I'm going, wow, we haven't had a raise in 3 years. My employer used to provide health insurance for us, and now he's told us we have to pay in order to have health insurance. And what's a pension? I don't have one. You know, I don't make enough to take money out of my check to put in a 401k. How do you talk to that person?
Since the Reagan years and buying into the trickle-down economic model, and that following with the trade policies, we have seen a direct correlation of middle class and union membership decline. And a lot of it was in key industries like auto and manufacturing, heavy steel. You've seen the timber industry in Oregon and Washington lose 60,000 jobs in rural communities. That really was a real blow to them. So we've seen a significant decline of unionization down through the 80s and the 90s, up until about 2-3 years ago. We're now seeing a shifting of that as the new economy, if you would, is being addressed when we started bringing in high tech into Oregon. Different industries that didn't exist back then that do today are starting to organize. So I think the opportunity of that wheel, private sector unionization declined to 7% nationwide. That's the lowest it's been. We're at the very bottom, but it bottomed out and it's now moving up, and my union has grown over 5,000 members in the last 3 years alone. We're now over 25,000 members in our Oregon local.
And that's with the decline in stores, am I correct?
Decline in stores, but expanding more employers, more companies that used to operate one store union, another one non-union. A lot of that is the structure of the U.S. labor law, which is different than most of the European, Canadian, Japan, and Australian models.
Well, that's good. That made my pension continue. Is that
Your pension is well funded. We're green status. We're pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
And we have more members now in pensions in our industry.
So now I want to join. I want to join the union. My employer is against the union. What are some of the things that I can do that won't cost me my job?
Well, it's an 8A3. That's a heavy terminology, but it's a charge under the National Labor Relations Act. The NLRA provides that an employer cannot terminate somebody for union activity. Do they try to do it under other terms? Absolutely. The federal law provides that you're entitled through a petition that a majority of employees that want to go through a union can have a secret election. There are employers who have agreed to what are called card checks. That's traditional and heavily unionized industries. That's where the employer says, if you have a demonstrated majority, just show us and we'll recognize that. That happened just this last Friday. A department out of Fred Meyer's was recognized, and we received the letters just by doing a card check. But the secret election's held by the National Labor Relations Board, and they would conduct that, and a simple majority means that you have the right to collectively bargain.
So simple majority means 50 plus 1, am I correct?
50 plus 1.
Right. Okay. One of the things when we talked and I was looking up some things regarding our labor unions, I noticed something, and it touched me simply because I'm retired. And it said, union workers are 54% more likely to have employee-provided pensions.
Absolutely. This is kind of interesting. Since 1968, when Occidental Petroleum's accountants figured out this IRS rule that they could vacate their pension, pay in a pension, and put money into a savings account. It was an obscure code called IRS 401k. Today, most workers know 401k as a main retirement that they think is a pension when it's actually a defined contribution plan. It's a savings plan. It has no insurance on it. So we've seen a shift from the private sector employment from pensions, defined benefits, defining how much you get in the rest of your life, to how much a defined contribution is how much you put in,
And it's
not sure that it will survive your life.
right. When it's gone, it's gone.
It's gone because it's not insured. The pension is insured through the Pension Guarantee Trust Corporation, a quasi-government self-funded plan, so all pensions pay into a pool to ensure other pensions are solvent.
Right. And the other thing was 83% of union workers have jobs that provide health insurance benefits, but only 62% of non-union workers can say the same thing.
That's correct. So it creates a disparity in the local community when you have stronger union benefits, whether it's a pension, whether it's affordable health care, you are leaving more money in the community, higher wages. You're leaving more money in the community to circulate and create the health of that community. Without a union, you are likely to have less opportunity for a safe pension. You're less likely to have affordable health care, large deductibles, large copays. You probably would have an inferior prescription plan. It doesn't cover what a union plan traditionally does. The companies know how to mix it up.
Right.
And so when they look at the total economic package, a union member generally makes 32% more than a non-union person, almost every industry. And this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that anybody can go onto the BLS site, bls.gov, and pull up this data.
You know, as you were talking, I began to remember some things like going to Nevada when we were trying to organize one of the big stores out there, Walmart, I'll say it.
Yeah.
You know, and the things that they did to keep those people non-union, such as in the meat department in particular, instead of they gave them $1 raise, because giving them $1 raise was less expensive
Right.
than having to provide them with medical insurance and a pension. And the people bought into it.
A lot of people will take the money over the long-term benefits, not realizing they're shooting themselves in the foot. There is a retirement insecurity catastrophe heading our way. The baby boom that's retiring at 10,000 a day, the edge of the baby boom is likely to be the working in retirement. I'm retired, but I'm actually working because I can't afford what I have, whether it's savings, whether it's the cost of health care. Here in the Portland metro area, the cost of housing is so phenomenally out of whack. I mean, there's just a lot of that. We are looking at a walking, talking retirement, which is kind of a sad thing. This is not what our parents envisioned for our workforce.
Right. I was just talking to my wife today about housing in Portland, since, you know, and the fact that we were looking at a house in a neighborhood where I went back in, well, 15, 20 years ago, I could have gotten it for $18,000. And today, I can't afford to even look at the same house is over $750,000.
It's phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal what's taken place.
I've made some bad business decisions in my life.
Hindsight is always clear, but
Oh yeah, well, this is 2020, huh?
sometimes you want to put the mist on the glass so you can't see the hindsight.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that I was looking at is when I was looking this over. You mentioned something about union wages, but here, all people have to do is go online and just put in union versus non-union. And I was shocked. It says on average, workers earn wages that are 27% higher as a union worker.
Right.
You know, I know my son, who lives in Florida, is a non-union worker. You know, and I keep trying to explain to him, you work for an employer that pays you less than what the union worker makes. You don't have medical insurance. You can't afford to purchase it through your employer. And when you get older, you don't even have a pension plan. How do you get through to these young people that just because you think you're saving $10 today and you're making $10 more today is going to hurt you in the future.
I think it's not just young people. I think there's a share of the population that don't understand unions set the prevailing wage, the community standard, whether it's in electrical, construction, whether it's in retail, whether it's in healthcare. We set a standard, and the non-union has to pay a competitive wage similar. So we've actually are the pillars of the middle class. And where we've seen the middle class decline is where you see where the unions have declined. There's a direct correlating data on that. So it really is a matter of I've seen this just happen in a vote last month in Missouri, where the voters had the opportunity to repeal the right to work for less law that passed in the state of Missouri through the legislature and the governor signed. They put it up on the ballot. In a primary about a month ago, more Republicans voted in Missouri than Democrats, and yet they repealed right to work by 76%. That tells us that people are economically seeing if you kill the engine that creates the middle class, the unions, then you're going to have very wealthy owning larger shares like they do of the national income, and you're going to see more economic disparity.
So it's another subject out there, public and private. What's the difference in the two unions?
The private sector unions, the private economy is governed by the National Labor Relations Act. States have adopted public employee relations acts, call them miniature NLRAs, if you would. They provide for public sector collective bargaining. You're aware of a Janus decision that just came down, but making it all but in the public sector unions essentially right to work. This is probably an effort to defund the labor community from being active in the community and politics and in civil life. It won't deter us. If anything, we will all collectively double down and bring even more of the private sector to bear in that effort. The problem I have is the public sector unions still have to represent people that are freeloaders. They want the benefits of collective bargaining. They want the benefits of the grievance procedures. They just simply don't want to pay for it. And somebody has to pay for it. And it's kind of interesting to see conservative government, conservative decision makers, especially on the U.S. Supreme Court, weigh in such a way that they believe that the government should be meddling with labor and management, when most would say stay out, keep the government out of that decision.
I know most of the people out there, you mentioned Janus, and we'll take a couple of minutes on that one because that's a public sector situation, i.e. the people that work for the state, for the county, for your local governors, the government agencies.
Right.
And a decision that came down says that the union in those industries must represent everyone in the bargaining unit. And you don't have to belong to the union, and you don't have to pay for the representation. Am I correct?
That's correct. And that's a real fallacy to allow that. That's what's going to weaken those unions, potentially. Now, what I'm really encouraged by is that I've seen my brothers and sisters in the public sector move and adapt to a internal organizing model that I think will counteract a lot of that. And I think most people, I was given that somebody who was fair share had the right to drop out. They said, well, I'm not going to because I still feel that I have an obligation to be part and parcel paying for what my benefits are, as opposed to somebody who would drop out is simply saying, I'm a freeloader. I want something for free. And if the union has to represent me, under the duty of fair representation, and they have to expend tens of thousands of dollars in legal court actions. They have to do
of the members' money that belongs to the union.
So that's why I call it the Freeloader Act.
Right.
It's government interfering between management and labor.
Well, I know that parts of this is in the courts right now,
Yeah.
but part of it has been implemented, and that's the part where you don't have to pay for political actions within the union.
Well, and this is really coming from an organization called the Freedom Foundation, a very anti-union, right-to-work proponent organization funding all of this amongst other groups. And it's really taken away and trying to silence the voice of workers at the end of the day. And we will not be silenced. We will advocate for the middle class and workers in general. We will continue. Why they think that they've dealt some kind of a death blow, I actually see a stronger, more lean and viable union in the public sector being more active. It's kind of an interesting when they threaten the workers. I mean, Oregon has a strong tradition going back to the Wobblies in the 1800s, and that spirit's still here.
Well, it looks like they're depending on the lack of knowledge by workers. Therefore, it's pocketbook politics.
It is absolutely pocketbook back issues, and that's why we created a political party called the Oregon Working Families Party, to stress on economic packages so that people, when we support candidates, you could see somebody, oh, well, they must be for safe pensions, they must be for affordable health care, they must be for good quality education. So we've become the good housekeeping seal of approval because we thought people weren't getting the information, and we needed to have somebody advocating in the political arena and in the labor in your work site space as well.
Well, one of the things we're going to do here in a few seconds, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring in someone, and we're going to talk about not only the political side of unions, but the political side of things that's going on within the state today, i.e. The Portland area, Clackamas area, well, across the state. How many counties do we have here now?
36 counties.
36 counties. And rest assured, we're going to try and get to it as many as we possibly can within the next half an hour. So if you will bear with me for a few, we'll take a short pause and we'll be right back.
You are watching Oregon Voters Digest. This program can be seen again on these channels on these dates and times. Tell a friend.
We're back, and joining us now is someone that you all know. He's here more than I am most of the time this year.
Because you're out playing golf.
They always want to get on me about my golf game.
You're doing the old man thing.
Hey, that's right. Retired, gonna have fun. But you know, during the political season, we always get together, and I'm talking about Fred Stewart.
Yeah.
Fred, how are things going? We talk. It's like I saw you last night.
Yeah.
You know, because we talk all
On
the
Facebook.
time.
You're one of the top. You got a following on my Facebook. You got all these women wanting to respond to Robert. I was like, one day his wife's gonna jump on to tell everybody, cut it out. He's taken.
Oh, that's right. But you know, it's really speaking of that Facebook thing, it's really strange how people have this idea that they can just say anything at the keyboard, you know, and they don't know you, they don't know if you know them or where they live or anything. They're just gonna say certain things to you. And I keep saying to people, don't make it personal. When you're talking politics, it's not personal, it's about the issue. And you know, I didn't talk personal about people 4 years ago when they were talking about the president that I liked. You know, or 8 years ago when he first came on and the Republicans said we will not work with him before even knowing what he was going to do. You know, I mean, all of those things, I let people have their say. You know, I had mine, but I let them have theirs and I didn't attack them personally. And this gives me an opportunity on this show to say, because I have the mic, hey, stop being personal and talk the politics and the issues. Fred comes up with a lot of good issues, although he has one TV program that he keeps posting that...
CRTV?
I wish he would.
John Smith? The reason why people don't want that particular... I get more complaints about that video, that guy, is, you know, we're out here in Oregon, and we got a very racist media conglomerate. They're very racist. They don't usually allow black people to express how they feel in a contextual manner of how issues are. So here you got CRTV. They've gone and hired a bunch of black folks to a conservative group, and this black guy is so effective at communicating what a lot of black people are saying. I was telling on Facebook that your average black family votes Democrat, but the way they live is pretty darn conservative, very conservative. Matter of fact, the most conservative people I know in Oregon aren't white. They're pretty black, you know, but they vote Democrat, boom, 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 every time, right? And so they just don't like how effective it is. He comes across, he reminds me of, you know, Willie Harris and a bunch of guys at the barbershop. Yeah. You know, you know,
where we get all our news.
Where we get our news. You remember that show, that movie Barbershop? You remember toward the end of the movie, Cedric the Entertainer? He gets up and he says, OJ did it. You know what I mean? He just says, let's stop messing around. The boy did it. You know, I said, that's black people, and it's suppressed a lot, because like I said, we got some some racist guys that run our media.
You know, we know that there's some racism within the state of Oregon.
But most media?
People, the media is the media, and they've had their say for years.
But Robert, some of our closest white friends, who I think are allies in trying to defeat racism, they read what these racist white guys release to them, and they believe a lot of this stuff is true.
Well, I don't know if they believe it or they just report it.
They believe it.
Okay. And, you know, that's going to be a show that we're going to do, and I'm sure when Bruce gets back, we're going to talk to him about that. We have to talk about this, and we have to get our people involved, regardless of how you feel that your party is doing, regardless of how you feel the person you elected, because you did elect them. They didn't get there on their own. You had to go in and punch a ballot. It's up to us to begin to hold their feet to the fire. And it was something that we used to say when I was the president of A. Philip Randolph, and I was collecting after electing. You know, one of the things we as black people have a tendency to do is sit around and wait to see what they do to help us, rather than us going out and telling them what we want.
Well,
go ahead.
And I actually think that anybody of any color, we learned this a long time ago, if I'm around white people and they say something racist, call them out. Call them out. Don't accept that behavior. If and Bob, I know you know my Facebook.
Yeah.
You know I call them out.
Yeah.
You just can't accept that being the status that's the new normal.
Yeah,
You gotta call them out.
More white people are doing it. That's why I keep highlighting this stuff.
Right.
You know, it's like I posted the other day. We got a couple of editors actually here in Portland, where my people, we have found that they have used the N-word, right, when describing black people. Remember I posted that, I said, okay, how far back does it matter? Does it matter if it was a year ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? You understand?
Right.
I remember that debate. And some white friends of mine asked me about that, and they go, well, why did you post that? I said, well, think about it. We got an editor for a paper, major paper, who has used the N-word in an aggressive manner in describing black people, right? Right here in Portland, Oregon. Well-known person, right, has used it. So everybody in the political power structure that's white or black goes to this person. I don't know if they've changed. You know, this was, I will admit from this one, a while ago. I won't say how long ago. It wasn't recent, okay? But how do I know? I mean, we've only heard about it a couple of times. For all I know, this guy does it every month.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or whatever. But he is part of putting out news stories and defining what's good, bad, indifferent, whatever. He may be a white supremacist. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying this person is.
But
I'm
you
just
don't
saying,
know. He could be anything.
He could be anything.
Right.
And in other words, he's never put in the position where a guy like you understand, can call him out on it. Because you know what? I'm sure he's smart enough not to say it in front of you. You see what I'm talking about?
Know your audience.
You would be surprised at how many people I have from childhood that are in Facebook that lived a different life experience. And I think until you actually feel some form of discrimination, you really don't have a sense. And you know, I've shared with Bob years ago that I had a form of discrimination because wait, I'm white. I have blue eyes. How can this be?
Yeah.
But my family were Catholic in a non-Catholic community.
Here in Oregon?
Yes.
Yes, you got stories. You got stories.
And one of my ancestors was the Catholic priest in Lebanon in the 1920s when they were burning the cross, the KKK, against the Catholics on the North Hill.
They burned crosses here in Portland.
They burned them here, and the leader of this whole area from the western United States lived outside of a little town called Dallas, Oregon.
Yep, I know you're talking about.
I grew up in Dallas, and I was like, the Catholics made up 2-3% of the community's
He's
population.
the reason why the Oregon chapter, I keep forgetting his name, but he's the reason why Oregon chapter of the KKK got kicked out of the Klan, the National Klan. I think it was like 1925, 26. He made an argument at the National Klan meeting in South Bend, Indiana, at their national convention.
Right.
He goes there and he says, you know, we got black people in Oregon, but there's a lot of nice ones there.
No.
I mean, I don't want them getting power and stuff. Who we really need to worry about is them damn Catholics. I mean, he literally said the biggest threat wasn't black people. Now, you got to remember, he's in Oregon.
Right.
And he's in a place where there's not very many black. And he even liked a couple. But them damn Catholics.
Exactly.
You know, and of course, he's in South Bend, Indiana, not known to be the friendliest toward black people.
Right.
And he's got the Mississippi and the Alabama. They thought this guy was talking some other language. Like, where did you come from? I came from Oregon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they didn't believe him.
Well, see, you know, we could go back and revisit all of this history, and it's a good history lesson for our audience. You know, but we have an election coming up in 5 weeks, 5-6 weeks from now, and we have some people that are running, and some things that are going on around this state that are just not politically savvy, or I'd say voter knowledgeable, i.e. in Clackamas County, a lady running for the Clackamas County representative. She's out walking the neighborhood, and someone called the police on her.
Well, no, I thought she was a state representative.
State representative.
Yeah.
And someone called the police on her. Here in Multnomah County, we have a historical race taking place. Two Black Americans, because it's time to call us what we are. We're citizens of the United States, and so we're Black and we're American. So from here on out, I'm a Black American. So it's time. They're running, and there's some things going on in that campaign. We have a governor's race where one side has said that the other side is not doing things for schools, not doing things for the people of the state because of the PERS situation.
Okay, Brown.
And if you don't know what the PERS situation is, you'll believe this guy.
Yeah.
Because he said it, I went and investigated it and found out that this is not a governor's issue. This is an issue that took place 15, 20 years ago that is now standing at someone's door. But let's start.
The fascinating thing about this thing with the governor's race is I'm always arguing with my Republican friends about this. I go, Kate Brown, it's weird. I've known Kate since '92.
Mm-hmm.
And, Kate Brown, I never was a big fan of hers as a state representative. I mean, the woman made a lot of mistakes, but I was telling everybody, I go, if you look at what she's done as governor, she's got to be the most effective governor we've had probably since Vicatia. Just look at her accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
You just go, it's like shock and awe. And I go, Newt has got to have a hard time trying to say, he sounds silly sometimes.
Well, that's why he went out and got ladies to represent his side.
Yeah.
Is because he's trying to appeal to the softer side of men. And you have to play in this game in order to understand what's going on.
Kate's record is just too solid.
Kate Brown is the person who ushered in a whole lot of new legislation, whether it's Fair Work Week, whether it's raising the minimum wage, in a unique way in Oregon history that Portland Metro has higher costs, so they have a higher minimum wage than, say, out in Burns, Oregon. It's that kind of innovation that is very productive. Sick day ordinances, equality, a retirement for every single Oregonian that they can participate through their employer if they don't have a pension or a 401k. Very innovative. But she really cut her teeth as Secretary of State, in my view. She brought in mass voter registration. There's now 400,000 plus Oregonians registered to vote that were not registered, and made it to where we're on the verge of becoming the highest. We're in the top 5, but I could see us being in the top 3 in terms of voters participating in elections.
I was trying to say, Kate, God, it's going to be interesting how history views Kate. I think she's going to win, but let's say she loses.
Right.
It is going to be so, man, if you just look at her record, you got to go way back. You're going way back. We've had some good governors, but when you just look at what she's gotten accomplished in the time that she's been there.
In
4 years?
Is it 4 years or 3 years?
5 years?
It's not even 4 years.
Yeah.
She went through, and what I really enjoy is that we believe, a lot of us in the labor movement, that we have to start creating a safety net in our society as the middle class has been collapsing. Until we bring something back to creating a viable, strengthened middle class, we have to start setting up minimum people falling through. It's not just throwing money in food stamps and WIC, but in making sure that there's quality, affordable education for all kids, affordable health care for all kids. Just all those kind of programs she's advocated are safety net, and they're forward thinking, and you don't see that in Mississippi or Alabama or in the Midwest.
Well, what you see, I look at some of our I won't call them Republicans, because really and truly the Republicans that I knew back in the day didn't act this way.
Well, they couldn't be elected today.
Yeah.
In their own party.
Right.
Vern Duncan is an example. He's told me that personally.
Oh, I agree.
And so
150%.
But third world countries are two-tier countries, i.e., they have poor and they have rich. That middle class is not there to be this stabilizing force.
The strongest middle class in the world is in Canada. It's an irony. We should look north to their economic system.
Kind of their banking system. You got to remember, they are lucky. You got a country for one thing that helps them that I don't think we could ever do. But you take their mortgages. The country, the government of Canada buys every single mortgage in the country, so their risk parameters are so much different. There are people here in Portland, Oregon, who are hardworking, right?
Right.
Make decent money. If they could qualify for a loan, as far as interest rates and stuff, right, they wouldn't get a loan. Whereas if they were in Canada, say if they were just up in British Columbia, they'd get a loan. And
well, we went through that when I was a loan officer, where you could get a loan if you did, no asset, no income, no asset loan.
No, it's not that far. They do. It's against the law.
Ridiculous.
It's against the law in Canada to do stated loans. Everything's full doc. But what would be good is if Oregon, right, said we're going to buy all loans in Oregon, the state, let's say $300,000 and below.
Right.
And it's interesting you talk about that, because some of us have been talking about a state bank in the similar way that North Dakota has a state bank that's been there for, if you would, that's what maintained through the Great Depression, the ranchers and the farmers.
So I'm so on board with that.
There's some actual discussion about doing that in a very serious way.
Yeah.
If you look at Canada, their GDP for healthcare is 10%. We're 16 to 18% gross domestic product. We have some really unique opportunities to look at our northern neighbor.
Yeah.
And pirate their ideas.
This gets into, but you see, Canada, you talk about for their healthcare. Canada, I love what they do to their pharmaceutical companies. They say, look, you can sell your pills for as much as you want. It is totally legal to charge $1,000 a pill in Canada. But they say, look, if you charge more than $10, we will allow, under your copyright, other people to make it if they can make it cheaper. You understand?
Right.
I mean, they're totally straight up with it. So they tell the pharmaceutical companies, we are a capitalistic nation.
Right.
You can sell your pills for whatever, but if it goes above $10 a pill, well, A, B, and C drug company, if they can make it and sell it for $10 a pill, they can.
Right.
Yeah.
So guess what happens? Their pill cost.
That's why everybody's crossing the border.
Exactly.
And so this is what this show is all about, is trying to, the little knowledge that we have when a number of us come together, it becomes not a wealth of knowledge, but at least more than pocket change. And so we get an opportunity to.
But let's make sure we talk about this thing with Loretta and.
Okay.
And
let's do that now. Let's just stop everything and let's talk about. Let me start off by saying I know that your union, United Food and Commercial Workers, supported Loretta in this election.
We do support Loretta Smith. We don't have anything against per se Joanne Hardesty. But we've seen somebody who has delivered on the goods, if you would, who's demonstrated that. Most recently, from a labor perspective, I watched the Teamsters get rolled by the county commission on the AMR ambulance contract, and it was an easy fix, but no, the county commission led by Chair Kafora just rolled that through, and the only one that stood up and fought for the Teamsters was Loretta Smith. That's proof in the pudding. But then it followed on to the Citizen Involvement Committee that the county just disbanded in violation, in my view, of the charter, that they have their own committee, they hire and fire their own staff by charter, they're independent of the council that way, yet the council just took it over and abolished the members and is in a pause, in violation. The local attorney, Dan Meek, has filed lawsuit litigation. Again, who fought for the little guy? Right. Loretta Smith. She's the only one and passionately argued, and you can go on to the county video, she's the only one that passionately argued that they don't have the authority and that this was wrong. She just has demonstrated, from our perspective, she's there, and she knows complex issues, and I appreciate her. I
appreciate both women. I've known both women over 20 years. They're both smart women. That's why I don't want it to get into a mudslinging thing.
Right. Exactly.
It doesn't need to. They both got good resumes. They both are smart women, and you got to remember, about half of what they stand for, I'm against. And half I support in both of them. I've had my time with both of them. This thing with Loretta asking for her tax records because she didn't file a consultant company, with the city. I just think it's a cheap shot. I'm disappointed. I'm still neutral. I mean, I'm not endorsing anybody, but I just still feel that's a cheap shot.
And why is that?
Well, she's a consultant, and friends, a consultant, what happens with a lot of people who don't have a lot of labor skills, if they can't find a job, they become a consultant.
That's not nice. Because,
it's true.
Because I'm a consultant.
But you're retired. See, you got some income coming in. You know what I mean? You got some income coming in.
He has a pension.
He has a pension coming in. Hey. I do not think, from what I know, and I don't know what's in her bank account.
Yeah.
But let's just say, as a person who's grown up around wealth and stuff, I've never picked up with Joanne that she's out there breaking the bank. You know what I'm talking about? And she's a consultant. She sits down and helps candidates get elected. She helps politicians.
Does she get paid?
I don't know how she gets paid.
I don't know how much or how.
I will say that they're notoriously not paid as well as
okay, but the idea is Uncle has his hand out. And Uncle says that if you have a business in the state of Oregon, you're supposed to file.
And we all do that, make a certain amount and above.
No, I filed and we never made a penny.
I understand what I'm trying to say.
But I paid to file.
I agree with you, and she should do that. But what I'm trying to say is, if she was a consultant all this time and didn't bring in more than, let's say, $35,000 a year, even if she does file, and you know what I'm going with this.
Yeah.
She ain't paying nothing. You know how much money you got to make in order to even be able to pay something?
My question becomes this, and you've heard me say this online. Yeah. How do you hold someone else's feet to the fire if you don't hold your own?
I hear you 100%. But what I'm getting to is most consultants in politics in Portland, Oregon, most, not all, because there are some that are well paid. You understand? But most consultants, they make
small amounts.
You understand what I'm talking about? Some make nothing. I was like, when Joanne was married, and she was a consultant, she may not have made anything. I've never heard of anybody hiring her. I've been in politics for a little bit. I ain't saying I would here. It's not like people say, hey, I just hired Joanne. You know what I'm talking about? But I have literally never heard anybody say, well, no, I hired Joanne.
Well, that's proof that you're neutral, because that's not a good thing for her.
Yeah.
But what
I'm trying to say is, who cares that she hasn't filed?
Yeah. And that we could beat that horse until
that's why I appreciate issues that are substantive.
Right.
Well, no,
so what are the issues within this election? What are the issues?
One of the deciding issues early on for us with Joanne and Loretta was Joanne's willingness to working on a committee to abolish the Oregon political tax credit. And I think that would be devastating for the little guy. A lot of unions, a lot of organizations use that tax credit, and that was a flag for us that went up. But that's what made us start looking around, and that's an issue.
She's probably a paid consultant on that one.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't think she was. But that might save the state $14 million a biennium, but it would also lessen the voices of people that can give small contributions and get it back on their short form or long form.
Right.
I think that's
so. What
great.
What do you see as some of the issues that they should be talking about, not only within the
housing? This city, it flat stinks for business expansion. It flat stinks. We just lost another business to Clark County here. We're talking about a guy that's expanding his business from 50 employees to probably 100, 125, employees. We are a great place to start a business. This is a great place to be a startup, but expanding businesses, as far as putting boots on the ground, as they say, people and stuff, Portland's just not it. just not it. And
but Portland's landlocked by other cities, and it seems like you only have so much industrial land, you have only so much commercial land.
well, most of this
So that's
expansion I'm talking
great.
about it would fit in our commercial properties that we've got, and that's why in this town we see so many large warehouses up for sale and stuff like that, because those warehouses would be great for a business to expand. You know, let's say from the garage to that space, but they don't because of our taxes and a bunch of other stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you got a business and you get into a certain point, you know, you're looking at Clackamas County. You're right. You're looking outside, or you're looking at leaving the state. You understand? Because if you can't be in a major metropolitan area and do well here in Portland, you may say, "Hey, let's go to Seattle. Let's go to, someplace else."
And one of the things I know,
But you're right
a
about
friend
us
of
being
mine,
landlocked. But that gets in the way more of manufacturing.
Yeah.
The landlockedness it really limits us what we can do for manufacturing.
well, one of the things that I know is a friend of mine, he was going to move his business. Now get this, from one side of the street to the other. The city was going to charge him over $100,000 to make that move.
Oh, I've heard worse stories than
You
that.
know, and so yes, I can understand that, but
About 7 years ago, we almost lost every Popeye in Portland because of that.
yeah,
Because they were doing the remodel. You know, they had to sing every 10 years. They do this, this
Right.
new
Now
remodel.
that's fighting words.
And
I
yeah,
love
oh no,
Popeyes.
I mean Popeye franchises were almost shut down, all because when they went in to do their remodeling, their first permit bid from the city of Portland was like 180 grand, but they were only doing $250,000 worth of
yeah, that's
bill.
not good.
well, yeah.
Well,
but
you know,
the city did fix that.
we got about
There is
we got about a
Popeyes in
minute.
Aurora.
Yeah.
We got about a minute here, and you know, I just want to say to our listening audience that one of the things that we try and do to you is give you some ideas to think about things, not to tell you what to do, but to think about things. Why should you become union? Why should you not be union? Why should you talk to your representative? Why shouldn't you talk to your representative? But the one thing that you should do, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about this, and that's get off your butt and vote.
Yes.
Don't put it on the refrigerator. It's going to come to your house. Mark your ballot, send it in. If you don't send it in, have someone drop it off for you. Hey, this is
vote
Bob
Democrat,
Williams. Fred, thank you. Jeff, thank you. We'll see you next week.